Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Blissed? Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
Yes.
Hey, it's great to hear your voice. I'm glad you're back in the United States. And so you just came back from across the pond, right?
Switzerland, yes.
Yeah, Switzerland. So, what you went? Can you share with us? You went to a convention about pain. Can you share with us what you learned, what you spoke about? Interesting things that have happened.
I was asked to come and speak about 50 years of neuromodulation. This year is the 50th anniversary of my introduction of spinal stimulation. And interestingly, it is still being used much more now than ever all around the world. And that was really the beginning of modern pain management.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, there were a number of speakers. There were 4 from the United States. I thought the most innovative was a physician from Alaska who does lots of, quote, cryotherapy. But what she means by cryotherapy, you put a probe into a nerve that you want to destroy and actually freezes it. Instead of, we used heat way back to destroy, but now they're using cold.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've heard of using vodka. Literally, Dr. Shealy. I know a woman who had cancer, and she was in incredible pain, and they injected her nerves where this pain was with vodka. Literally.
Well, that's pure alcohol, and actually we have used alcohol for many, many, many decades also. I used to use phenol, which is a type of alcohol, to destroy the nerve to the facet joints.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Shealy, when we destroy the nerves that tell us that there's pain, when we experience pain, is that a good thing? I mean, to not feel the pain, but the cause is still there? I'm trying to understand. Is it better to...
In certain situations, like for the facet joints, if the facet joints are already diseased, that is damaged from something, and interestingly, those particular nerves have no known benefit other than to give you feedback from the joint. In other words, by destroying the facet joint nerve, you're not damaging any sensation, any muscle power, and I probably did over 1,200 of those throughout my life. I introduced that back in the early 70s.
Dr. Shealy, what is pain? What actually is it?
Well,
we know what it feels like, but what is it?
Pain is an indication of irritation to some structure. Now, it can be muscle, it can be nerve, it can be any organ in the body. Pain is an indication that particular part that's hurting is not happy. It's irritated one way or another.
Okay. I was talking with one of our dear friends, and one of their relatives has something called triple-negative breast cancer. And it's... Let me just read what one of these websites says. And it says, these subtypes of breast cancer are generally diagnosed upon the presence or lack of 3 receptors known to fuel most breast cancers: estrogen receptors, progesterone receptors, and human epidermal growth factor receptors. The most successful treatment for breast cancer targets these receptors. Unfortunately, none of these receptors are found in women with triple-negative breast cancer. In other words, a triple-negative breast cancer diagnosis means that the offending tumor is estrogen receptor negative, progesterone receptor negative, and HER2 negative, thus giving the rise to the name triple-negative breast cancer. On the positive note, this type of breast cancer is typically responsive to chemotherapy. Because of its triple-negative status, however, triple-negative tumors generally do not respond to receptor-targeted treatments. Depending on the stage of its diagnosis, triple-negative breast cancer can be particularly aggressive and more likely to recur than other subtypes of breast cancer. And that's what it says in the first 2 paragraphs of Understanding Triple-Negative Breast Cancer by the TNBCFoundation.org website. So, Dr. Shealy, here's a question I have, and this is a question that many of our class may have when they get to this point with someone whom they know or someone in their family or maybe even themselves. The question is, this lady that I know, middle-aged, is being treated with a experimental therapy. And the treatment involves certifying that she is not eating any foods outside of what you might get at a supermarket. Now, what I'm saying is she might want to have spirulina or greens or some other things, or may want to try hemp oil or colloidal silver, or she can't do it. She has to certify that she's not doing any of these other types of therapies. So there are many questions that I have around this particular person's situation. Number one, do you get better care when you agree to these experimental therapies? That's one question.
Well, the question is, do you get better care when you do experimental treatment? And
yeah, that's what I mean. Mm-hmm.
I'm honestly, in general, as anybody who's ever heard me speak knows, there is no circumstance under which I would have any chemotherapy for any type of cancer, period.
Mm-hmm.
End of report. Mm-hmm. I think they're all poison. The average, supposedly, the average increase in life expectancy with the use of chemotherapy is 4 months. That's after often months of torture with chemotherapy. So there's no way I would try chemotherapy, period.
Okay. So when a person signs up for this, do they know that they're getting the actual experimental treatment or therapy? Or could they be just getting the placebo and giving them maybe a false hope?
Yep.
Is that possible?
In general, there are, so-called crossover double-blind and all that kind of studies, which means you may have a 50% chance of getting nothing.
Mm-hmm. So,
that might be safer than the drug, of course.
Yeah. Well, here's the dilemma. When a person, and I'm hypothesizing that when a person is offered a treatment like this that is experimental, and I'm sure they're told, well, we don't know if it's going to work, but it might work, then there's some hope. Okay? But at the same time, when you find out that, well, you can't use hemp oil, or you can't use probiotics, or you can't use iodine, or you can't use colloidal silver, or you can't use massive doses of vitamin. Yes, vitamin C, Myers cocktails, and so forth. The B vitamins. I mean, there's so many things that I would want to do if I were in this situation that it would be an extremely difficult decision for most people when their medical doctor says, look, we've got this experimental treatment. Maybe we can get you in. I don't know, maybe. If everything works right and they accept you, whoever they are, maybe we can get you in. So now you're faced with this hope against hope versus trying something that other people have tried that has helped them, but you don't know if that's going to work either, versus doing nothing. What a terrible dilemma, Dr. Shealy.
Well, it is. But then, of course, to me, again, we're talking about conventional medicine. Now, in general, in acute illness, in cancer, classifies that when it's diagnosed, I like most acute therapies, except in cancer. On the other hand, for chronic therapy, I do not like anything that I can think of that conventional medicine offers.
Well, it's really interesting because, when I think about my situation, they wanted to do tests and more tests and more tests, and these tests were getting, pretty darn uncomfortable. And I wanted to use some of the therapies that you recommended. Actually, I wanted to use all the therapies that you recommended. And they were the medical professionals, if you want to refer to them that way, said, you know about the Blue Man, right? Yeah, sure, I know about the Blue Man. Meaning, well, we've got our own Blue Man right here in Springfield, and you gotta be really careful. So, but it's okay to have these massive doses of steroids, and it's okay to have these massive doses of really, really strong antibiotics, and it's okay to have long courses of these massive doses of really strong antibiotics. But, that colloidal silver stuff is really dangerous. And
you are speaking reality, that's all.
I am, and I'm speaking firsthand experience.
Right.
And, I am. And, from my perspective, and I don't know why they're called alternative therapies, but I guess we call them that. But heck, I got to tell you, they're working. They're really working. Really working. So that was the dilemma I wanted to share with you about this triple-negative breast cancer. And, how do you resolve that in your mind, and how do you make that decision? We'll be right back. Dr. Norm Shealy is with us. Class, Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. If you'd like to go to his website, normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com. And there you can peruse the optimal health information. And you can sign up for the same newsletter that I get multiple times per week, normshealy.com. Dr. Shealy, I was on the phone with one of our instructors, and she was telling me that a family member, a very young family member, has just been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, a child. What is the outlook for someone who is diagnosed with type 1 diabetes? What is their life? How is their life going to change, and what do they need to pay attention to?
Well, actually, that is an unequivocal indication for the use of insulin, almost inevitably, and it can keep them, properly done, and they can actually live a normal life expectancy if they can keep it controlled.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so what if they can't keep it controlled? What are the risks? What if they don't have let's say they use too little insulin, and they decide, you know what, I'm supposed to take 1 unit, I'll take a half a unit. What happens?
They're going to go in and out of the hospital with severe problems, going all the way up to coma. It really does. That is an absolute, unequivocal indication for lifelong therapy. Now, it is occasionally possible to bring it under control with extreme dietary and other approaches, but that's rare.
Okay. Well, Dr. Shealy, I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next few days here at the farmhouse. And I got to tell you, There are going to be a whole bunch of interested instructors, and I'll bet you they're going to have a lot of medical questions and discussions with you about all kinds of things that are happening. And I'm noticing that just about every family I talk with today has got someone who has either just died, someone who is dying, someone who's got a serious life-threatening disease. It's unbelievable. It's every family, Dr. Shealy. Every family. And I don't ever remember it being like this.
Well, it is a sign of the times, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And would you say that I just haven't been paying attention, over the years, or would you say that what I'm seeing is really people are getting sicker at an increasing rate?
I think we can say that toxicity is catching up.
Yeah.
The world is extremely toxic.
Mm-hmm.
Poison.
I just saw an article yesterday, and this was from the Independent News in the United Kingdom. And here's the headline. Russian radioactivity recorded at 986 times higher than usual as toxic cloud sparks nuclear accident rumors. Russian officials had previously denied any knowledge of a nuclear accident, but now the country's meteorological service admits finding traces of an isotope produced by splitting atoms in a reactor. So now we're finding out that, there's this radioactive cloud. It's over Russia, and it's moving. And is it going to affect us? Well, probably. And the isotope that was found is Ru-106, when it was found between September 25th and October 1st.
That means, are you being poisoned?
Yeah. And I think the answer is yeah, absolutely, for sure. So the isotope was found in Tatarstan in southern Russia and has reached all European countries, starting in Italy and toward north of Europe from 29th of September. The service that found this did not specify where the pollution originated, but the concentration of 986 times background level was found in a village close to the Russian border with Kazakhstan, around 20 miles from the Mayak nuclear facility. And there was an explosion at that facility in 1957, and at least 272,000 people were exposed to dangerous levels of radiation. And this particular facility serves as a reprocessing site for nuclear fuels. Class, I'm looking at a map of the United States at NETC.com, Nuclear Emergency Tracking Center. And it shows...
I got disconnected.
Okay, great. Dr. Shealy, I'm looking at a map of the United States at the Nuclear Emergency Tracking Center to look at radioactive measurements across the country. And it shows RADCON 1, RADCON 2, RADCON 3, RADCON 4, and RADCON 5 level measurements. And there are 3 RADCON 4 level alerts, if you will. We'll call it an elevated measurement, and they're in California, Florida, and Maine. But there are a lot of RADCON 3, which is considered an elevated measurement. And where are they? Well, let me tell you. I'm looking at the map right now of the United States. Maine, Massachusetts. These are the elevated measurements. New York, like New York City. North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Alabama. I'm scrolling across the map here, so it's taking me a couple seconds to do this. Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, South Dakota. I mentioned California before. Yeah, California has a bunch of them. And Arizona. So, and Utah. So that's where we have Radcon-3 elevated measurements. Now, it doesn't seem all that much different from what we might typically see, a little higher than normal, a little higher than normal. But I'm concerned about the radioactivity from Russia and radioactivity from all over. So the question, Dr. Shealy, is what do we do? What do we do when there's radioactive clouds circling the planet and we have leaks from all of the nuclear reactors all over the planet? Is there a protocol that you recommend that we endorse, support, and use to help protect us?
Well, the only thing that you can do that may help your thyroid gland, because the thyroid gland, interestingly, is the most sensitive to radioactivity. It is destroyed more easily than any other organ by radioactivity. The only thing you can do is take iodine. Now, the question is how much iodine? Well, it depends on what's going on in your life, but personally, I would take 1 iodoral every day. That's 12.5 milligrams, at least until the so-called threat is more or less past. I want to point out, by the way, that there is even a 1 did not exist before the 1940s.
And what was this that did not exist before the 1940s?
Any measurable level of radioactivity.
Oh, okay. Now, when you say iodoral, how does that compare to a drop of iodine, liquid iodine? Is there a conversion?
If it's that clear liquid iodine, that's 75 micrograms. And so, you would need a whole bunch. I mean, 20 micrograms is only 1.5 milligrams. Mm-hmm. And 1 iodoral is 12.5 milligrams.
Okay. What about the reddish-brown iodine? Is there a difference between the iodine that we would put on a wound versus the iodine we might consume orally?
Well, that's if you put on a wound. The main difference is alcohol. It is dissolved, if you will, in alcohol, and you wouldn't want to drink it.
Okay.
I don't know what other abnormalities might be in the brown stuff.
Okay. We have iodine liquid, tri-iodine here on the farm. That's the label, what the label says. And when a cow cuts his or her foot or hoof or leg or skin somehow, we'll just spray that on there. It's hard to get up close to them and work them. And they don't like it, and they certainly don't like the sting of the iodine. But we have a spray that we can spray them from like a foot away, and we use that. Now, would that be different? Is that
stronger.
something
That's 7.5%, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's about right. And is that something that we can put on our skin as a way of introducing iodine into our body?
Yes,
would that
iodine
work?
is absorbed through the skin. In general, they recommend for testing whether or not you're deficient in iodine using regular iodine, human iodine, which is only about, I think, 3%. But you paint a 1-inch square on the skin, don't wash it off, and if it's absorbed in less than 24 hours, you are deficient in iodine.
Okay, so let me see if I got this right. I could take a Q-tip, and I could use would I be able to use the tri-iodine, or would it be different?
It's a little stronger, so we don't know how long it should be. I would use regular tincture of iodine.
Okay, I'm writing this down. Tincture of iodine. And so I paint a 1 square inch area on my skin. I could do that on my arm, my forearm, right? And with a Q-tip, paint that on there. And if it's gone, if I don't wash it, if it's gone in 24 hours, I am deficient in iodine?
Exactly.
Okay. Then what do I do at that point?
Well, then you should be taking, I think, a minimum of 1.5 milligrams a day of iodine orally.
Okay. Is iodine something that can build up in your body? Do we develop a toxicity over time if we were to take the iodine?
In general, of course, to me, I've taken, iodoral for 12 years, I think, by now.
Mm-hmm.
And I recommend for most people that they build up slowly over a period of months to one a day, and that keeps you protected all the time from
Are there any...
at least your thyroid protected from radioactivity.
Are there any downsides to consuming iodine orally?
Well, if you get too much, too rapidly, it actually blocks the thyroid from taking up and functioning properly. So it can cause hypo or underactive thyroid.
Okay. And what happens if you have an underactive thyroid? What would the symptoms of that be?
Well, the most common would be fatigue and loss of hair.
Okay.
But for us men, I'm not sure you can tell.
So taking too much iodine can cause you to lose your hair?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or too little. I mean, it's interesting because it's a peculiar, contrary appearance. Too little or too much.
All right. So, so how do we get tested if we want to know?
Well, there is the only available test that's easy is the thyroid panel, which is a free TSH and a free T3 and a free T4. And the problem with that lab test is neither the lab that's run for those, the lab that's run for those could not distinguish between fluoride attached to tyrosine and iodine attached to tyrosine. And fluoride attached to tyrosine does not make the active thyroid. Do you understand? In other words, anybody living in a city drinking city water is going to get a false test of the blood levels of thyroid function.
Wow. Okay. Now, is iodine important for general health as well?
Life.
Okay.
It's important for energy as well. It actually, most of the thyroid in your body is not used in the thyroid, but in other cells to help produce energy. So you really do need thyroid. It is an essential mineral.
Okay, so iodine is an essential mineral. Okay. Well, it seems like it'd be really easy to, if you could stand the taste of it, to overdose yourself on iodine, thinking, okay, 1 drop's good, 2 drops would be really good, 4 drops would be really, really good. So what do we do? What do we do,
go
Dr.
up slowly. In general, most people will do okay if they get 1.5 milligrams of iodine daily.
Okay,
that is essentially equivalent to 1 iodoral a week.
Okay. 1.5 milligrams of iodine daily. Very good.
Right. But the nice thing about iodine is you don't excrete it and use it up overnight. So if you take 12.5 milligrams of 1 iodoral a week, you'll do just as well as taking 1.5 milligrams a day.
Now, does iodine help fight disease as well?
Well, yes, because it improves the immune system.
There you go. Okay. Dr. Shealy and I'll be right back right after these few short commercial announcements. So, class, where else would you hear that consuming too much iodine orally can cause hair loss? So, Dr. Shealy, that hair loss from consuming too much iodine, is that reversible? Does the hair grow back if you stop taking iodine?
In general, well, it depends. You've got to really get rebalanced. And interestingly, in my experience, it's much easier for women to get back to normal than it is for men.
Okay. And, I see people with thinning hair as they get older, and I'm wondering, is it because of the chemicals that they're taking? For example, I looked up lisinopril, and people take that for high blood pressure, and it's a derivative of snake venom. And one of the things that it does is it can cause hair loss. I mean, and how many people are on lisinopril? I imagine a lot.
And
that's what I read.
And you're lucky if it works in 1 out of 3 for the blood pressure.
Okay. So, all right, back to that. We've talked about this before. Then what does Dr. Shealy recommend for those who have increased blood pressure?
Well, the top of my list is always Kyani Nitro Extreme. The reason being, it is so simple. I mean, basically, it's 15 and a maximum of 30 drops twice a day, and it works in 70% of people and has other benefits as well, like increased energy.
Okay. Kyani Nitro Extreme. In class, you can go to Dr. Shealy's website and learn more about that. Kyani Nitro, NITROXTREME. Okay, so what else can we do? I like to eat red beets. Is that something that's
red beets may help, but interestingly, after age 50, it doesn't work nearly as well as it does before.
Okay, how about garlic?
We have trouble converting it into nitrous oxide.
Okay, how about garlic? Raw garlic.
There's some evidence that it helps. Personally, although I love the taste of garlic, I can't eat, especially raw garlic. It causes too much rumbling in my gut.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would recommend for someone who would like to avoid taking the pharmacomafia chemicals?
Well, there's a 90% chance of controlling your blood pressure by taking four of Dr. Shealy's youth formula a day, plus 2 of Dr. Shealy's essentials a day, plus taurine 6,000 milligrams a day. That combination works in 90% of people, and again, is quite safe.
Well, I do it. I take, let's see. No, actually, I take 6 of Dr. Shealy's youth formula. Class, that is vitamin C plus MSM. And I've been taking them for quite a while. And, Dr. Shealy, I don't know if it is an image I have in my mind, but I don't think I would feel as well if I stopped taking Dr. Shealy's youth formula. And I'm very serious about that.
Because you would drop your DHEA, dehydroepiandrosterone level. One of its greatest benefits is it helps you make DHEA.
Okay. Well, Dr. Shealy, and let me just share this with our class. Mrs. Finelli does not like the idea of having vitamin jars and containers on the kitchen counter. She doesn't like that. I like that because it is a constant it's a constant reminder of what we should do. And it's one of these out of sight, out of mind kind of things. So I like having my supplements on the kitchen counter. So I don't know if you can win this one. I think it's kind of like one of those toilet seat things, up, down, that I've heard causes divorce. It doesn't in our house, but I've heard those kind of things. I like the vitamin jars on the counter. Dr. Shealy and I will be right back, and we're going to talk about cancer deaths driven by bad health habits, the Madagascar plague, and sugar. The sugar industry blocked research linking sucrose to heart disease and cancer. Yeah, they blocked it. And what has Dr. Shealy said? He doesn't like the idea of sugar. Really. We'll be right back after top of the hour news and commercial announcements. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Blissed? Yeah. Patrick's engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. Dr. Shealy, M.D. Dr. Shealy, when I'm in Springfield, I'll swing by your office there, and I buy the formulas that you talk about. You mentioned Dr. Shealy's youth formula. Now, some may think that Dr. Shealy's youth formula is for young people. Children. No. Well, I just want to make sure that it's clear that it is it's a large dose of vitamin C with MSM, and you can buy that right at your clinic, or you can buy it online. So, class, if you'd like to go to normshealy.com, you can order it there. and it'll be shipped to you. Or if you're in the Springfield, Missouri area, you can stop by his office and clinic at the International Health Office. And let me give you that number if you'd like to call, 417-351-5221. 417-351-5221. And I've got to tell you, class, I meet a number of our students at USA Prepares and instructors right there. They happen to, it's not like we call and say, hey, let's all converge. They just happen to be there anyway when I show up. So it's great. It's great to see all of our students and instructors and members of the class at your office, Dr. Shealy. Anything you'd like to say about your office and what you're doing lately?
Well, I do want to mention that we have a renowned spiritual healer who is coming December 1st through 30th. She's coming here for me to test her, but she has been highly, highly recommended by one of my former students. She has all kinds of accolades, and as some people may know, I've been studying spiritual healers for over 45 years. And I like to show that they can change all kinds of things. My basic test is to see if they could change your EEG from outside the room. And once I've proven that, from my point of view, they've always got power.
Change your EEG from outside the room. Dr. Shealy, could you share a little bit more about what that really means medically?
Well, that means that somehow their brain-mind energy is able to go through the wall and actually affect your EEG. I have 200 EEGs for different healers through the years where we have shown that they can change your EEG. Actually, the furthest is Ottawa, about 1,000 miles away. And within seconds, a good healer can change your EEG. We have another one from 800 miles away in New Jersey. But in testing them here, I just put them outside the room. But the fact that the EEG changes when they start sending energy. Now, I actually did the first one of these on Olga Worrell back in 1977. And through the years, we've continued to collect evidence that this is true. But what this means to me is they are actually mentally able to send something, I believe, through scalar energy, because it's the same effect as scalar on the brain.
So they are able to transmit scalar energy with their minds?
With their mind. And I can do that. I've been a subject myself from outside the room, and I can affect your EEG from next door, so to speak. In a good way, by the way. We're talking about affected in a positive way.
Yeah. Dr. Shealy, now I wasn't there for this. I wasn't there that evening, but you did that at one of our meetups in Springfield, Missouri, right? You did a spiritual healing seminar, and you had volunteers.
Exactly.
Who wanted to participate in this to see what would happen, and you brought your EEG machine with you. Is that correct?
I don't remember bringing the EEG machine, but maybe I did. That's pretty complex.
Okay. I thought you did. Okay, but so what was the result when you did that in a public, well, I won't say public, but in a meeting where a lot of people from all over the Springfield Village area came, those who are students and instructors in the class? What was the result of the spiritual healing?
In other words, in general, although it may not cure serious illness, it can have a beneficial effect upon your overall health. And that's the bottom line, is we're looking at having people be able to heal or get well or develop, an improved overall immune system, etc., by essentially prayer or, quote, spiritual healing.
Dr. Shealy, over the years, over my 65 years of watching things and paying attention, I've noticed that there are some medical professionals who have what I would call, and what has been called, a great bedside manner. positive thinking, positive conversations, rather than being abrupt, coarse, negative. The people that I'm talking about have the opposite of that. They're really encouraging. Is that like a trait of a spiritual healer?
Yes. I think that's the same thing.
So these people whom I've noticed in the past with great bedside manner would be displaying the traits, and maybe they might even be spiritual healers?
Yes.
Interesting. Fascinating. Okay, because I've seen this. I've seen this over and over again, and I don't want to be around those in the medical profession who don't have that. And I've been...
Yes, I'm totally with you.
And I've been complimenting for as long as I can remember in different ways of complimenting those who seem to exhibit this trait or this series of traits. And I'll say, wow, that was a wonderful experience. Nurse, you have a wonderful bedside manner. Dentist, you have a wonderful, and I would use the word bedside manner because I don't know what the other word would be or the other phrase. Chair side manner, drill side manner, whatever you want to call it. There are those who have that, and the experience is so much better than those who don't have that. Now, is this something that is learned, or is this something that is congenital? Where does this come from, Dr. Shealy?
I think it actually comes from the person's personality. I think you're born with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I have experienced it, and it seems so much better. I'm looking forward to meeting this lady that you're talking about. I really am. And I have a feeling that that's going to be...
you will be having dinner with her on the 30th.
I'm all excited. I'm all excited about this. And maybe, if she's interested in coming on the air with us, we can all of us can come on the air and together and talk about this. That'd be kind of a neat thing, Dr. Shealy, if it works out with your schedule, and hers. Okay. I'm going to click on an article. Here is something that this is an article that really bothers me, and I'd like to share with you why. This is on the dailymail.co.uk. Cheerleader 18 is killed by a driver 31 who smashed into her car when he took his eyes off the road to breathe into court-ordered device that prevents drunk driving. Now, there are these devices that, let's say, a person is suspected of driving while inebriated or driving under the influence of alcohol. And if that person goes to court and the judge may order, okay, we're going to put one of these breathalyzer devices in your vehicle, this ignition type device that will shut down the ignition system so that you can't start your car should you fail the test of blowing into this machine. And I heard of a person who had this, and I was really interested in it. So I asked if I could try it. So I got in this person's car, and what you do is you turn on the ignition switch, and then you have X number of seconds to blow into this machine. And if you do successfully, you will get an indication, a sound, a beep, that everything's good, and you can start your vehicle. Well, I couldn't do it. And there's a technique that I did not learn in order to, you have to modulate, and you have to have a certain flow of exhaling, and I just didn't get it right. After 3, 4, 5 times, I did not get it right. And Mrs. Finelli was with me, and I said, can she try it? And so she tried it, and she couldn't do it either. Now, that's one part of this. That's getting your vehicle started. So let's assume that we're talking about someone who has a job, drives back and forth to work. And the judge says, okay, you can only drive back and forth to work because you've been convicted of driving under the influence, which may or may not be the case, because some people are threatened by the court system, and either you plead guilty and you get sentenced to 6 months of having one of these in your vehicle, plus pay $80, $90, $100 a month to have it, plus recalibration fees every month, plus installation costs and all that stuff. Or you run the risk of going to jail for a year. So what do you want to do? This is what happens.
You have a choice.
Right. Pick one. Okay. And a lot of people will say, well, heck, I'll just get one of these devices because I can't be in jail for a year. I'll lose my job, my house, my car, everything, my family, everything. So they pick being subject to this device. Now, I'm going to tell you the rest of the story, and there's medical reasons why I'm discussing this. And this is dangerous. This is extremely dangerous. And the people who are sentencing operators of vehicles to this, I think should be imprisoned. And I'll tell you why when we come back. That's Dr. Norman Shealy with us, and I'm talking about the ignition interlock device that some judges and courts order people to have installed, or they have the choice of either having that installed on their vehicles for, let's say, 6 months, and paying for that for, let's say around $100 per month, plus calibration fees, plus downloading fees of the results of what this device gathers as data. And then the person generally is required to take a course supervised by the state and submit proof of this attendance in court course to the courts in order to retain one's driving privileges, in order to keep one's job. Well, I'm not saying that I recommend drinking and driving. I absolutely do not. And I don't recommend distracted driving. And now municipalities and states are on the patrol looking for distracted drivers, meaning people who are texting and using cell phones while they're driving. Well, here's what these judges are doing. So if someone is convicted, and that doesn't mean they're guilty, that just means they're convicted of driving under the influence, because some cop says, your breath smells like alcohol. Let's take a breathalyzer test. Well, it still smells like it. Walk this line. Something's not quite right. So then they get arrested, put in handcuffs, taken to the station, put in jail, and then they get threatened with, you want to do with court, and then, you can plead guilty before you go to court, and you can avoid all these potential charges of going to jail for a year and so forth, sentences for that. But anyway, so here's what happens, Dr. Shealy. This device that I could not blow into, nor could Mrs. Finelli, to get it to work in order to get the vehicle to start, well, it goes off at random intervals. It's programmed to go off at random intervals. So what you do is, if you pass the test by blowing into this thing, and if you can't pass the test in a certain amount of time and a certain number of tries, that gets reported to this device, and it gets downloaded, and it's like, wow, you couldn't pass the test. You couldn't pass the test, so obviously you were drinking, and that gets reported to the court. Well, I couldn't get it to work. Mrs. Finelli couldn't get it to work, and by reading more about these devices, they go off. The alarm goes off while you're driving at random times. So you're behind the wheel, you're in traffic, or you're going down the interstate at 60, 70 miles an hour, and the thing goes off. Now, you've got so many seconds in order to prove to this device that you're not drinking. So you have to blow in it while you're driving. Well, actually, you don't have to.
Now, that sounds risky.
That's what I'm talking about. That's why I'm so angry about this. So this device goes off. Now, you have a choice. You've got X number of seconds to prove to this device that you can pass the test by blowing into it again, or it will shut down your vehicle. Pretty, well, what it does, the alarm goes off, okay, to let you know. Then your horn goes off. Then your lights start flashing. Now it looks like your vehicle's been stolen, right? It looks like you're driving a stolen vehicle because the lights and horn are going off as if, the theft alarm has gone off in your vehicle. Now, I'm sure some motorist, some do-gooder would look at that and go, wow, let me get on my cell phone, let me dial 911, because the car next to me in the slow lane has been stolen. Then the police come, they draw their guns, hands up, and somebody gets shot. Why? Because they've got this stupid device in their vehicle that goes off at random times while they're operating the vehicle. This is crazy. So here's what happened to this gal in Texas. She got hit by some guy whose interlock device went off, and so he puts his head down to blow into this short cord while he's operating his vehicle, crashes into the girl and kills her.
Mm.
So here's my question.
Well, I think that is unconscionable that it would be going off and having to be tested while you're driving. It should be before you open the car, but that's enough.
Well, I can tell you that this thing, there's the likelihood of this device going off within 30 minutes of operating this vehicle. I mean, you blow into it, wow, okay, it says you can start it, you go to start your vehicle, you back out of your driveway, you head to work, and you're in. Who doesn't commute 30 minutes to work? Pretty much everybody, right? Well, it's almost guaranteed to go off while you're driving. Now, these people are all around us. Why? Because it's a big money maker for the state. It's a huge money maker for the state. That's Dr. Norman Shealy's with us. NormShealy.com. NormShealy.com. Dr. Shealy is a medical doctor. And we're talking about this young lady who was driving or operating her vehicle, and she was involved in a brutal crash. What happened was a 31-year-old driver of a truck was looking down to adjust his court-ordered device that prevents drunk driving. Actually, it's this breathalyzer attached to the car's ignition system and alarm system and lights and horn. And so he was adjusting, and he's looking down. He didn't see her or her vehicle, crashed into her and killed her. She was 18. So what is happening, class, is judges and courts, in their insatiable greed for revenue, are doing things to make people pay and pay and pay. So if you've been accused of driving while intoxicated, and you agree that, well, heck, it's easier to pay the $100 a month for this device, the calibration and the downloading of the data from it, and then pay for these ridiculous, idiotic classes that you have to attend about driving, court-ordered. And if you agree that to do this, because the alternative is they're threatening you with a year of jail time or more, and you're going to lose your job and your house and your family and those kind of things. So you agree to do this. These people are on the road. Now, I don't subscribe to drinking and driving. I absolutely do not. But there's got to be a better way. So the courts are ordering people to have these devices on their vehicles. They are forcing drivers to be distracted. Now, who are these drivers? Well, I guess look at through your windshield ahead of you, look to your left, look to your right, look in your rearview mirror, and they're all around you, but you just don't know it. So here are these drivers being forced to be distracted because the alarm goes off while they're traveling, and they've got to reset it. Otherwise, their lights and horn are going to go off, making you and the police and everyone else think that they're driving a stolen vehicle, and then having the cops come and with guns drawn. This is what's going on. And this poor, beautiful young lady was killed. It's an outrage. So, Dr. Shealy, here's the medical component of this long discussion. Is there a possibility?
It is not medical. It is ethics. And
well, that's another component.
And the states are being unethical, immoral, and I would think ultimately illegal.
Mm-hmm. And here's the medical question I have for you. Is it possible that someone can get pulled over by the police and the cop says, I smell something. You know, your breath smells like you've been drinking. Is it possible that a person can have a condition, a medical condition, or a medical experience or event that would make their breath smell like alcohol and actually they were not drinking? Is that possible?
It is possible. Okay. It's a rare event, but apparently there's certain things, especially with people who are borderline diabetic, where they may actually produce alcohol in digestion.
Mm-hmm. That's what we're discussing, is the possibility that people who are convicted of a crime may not have committed that crime. People who are convicted of driving under the influence may not be. However, they may find that the risk versus the risk of going to jail and losing virtually everything is not worth it, and they can't fight it, so they just say, well, I wasn't drinking, but I guess I have to plead guilty because I can't go to jail. I'll lose everything. So I'll plead guilty and pay the $100 a month for 6 months. I'll be on probationary driving, and I'll only drive back and forth to work. And heck, I won't need to buy any food for 6 months, so I can't go to the store. I mean, these are the kind of things that happen to these people. And I just wanted to expose the criminality of this, Dr. Shealy.
Well, let's face it, the legal system is never perfect. I heard on the news as I was driving in and out of town this morning that a man who had been falsely convicted of murder after 22 years in prison was just released. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons I don't believe in the death penalty, because we know that there are people who have actually been put to death who will later prove innocent. And so the legal system is iffy.
Yes. Yes. Next subject, Dr. Shealy. The sugar... let me read these headlines. This is Daily Mail. The sugar industry blocked research linking sucrose to heart disease and cancer from publication 50 years ago, a damning report reveals. The researchers at the University of California at San Francisco uncovered data showing the sugar industry hid research linking sugar to cancer in 1968. New documents show that the Sugar Association funded an animal experiment called Project 259 to evaluate sucrose's effects on cardiovascular health. But when the data showed a clear link between sucrose and poor heart health, they pulled the plug. Researchers say that this paper had been published. Had this paper been published in 1968, it would have led to scrutiny and even regulation of sugar by the Food and Drug Administration.
Well, let's face it, Harvard was one of the leading people. Fred Stair at Harvard was a pimp, whore, prostitute for the sugar industry. He and I had some very foul letters back and forth between us in 1970 because he was promoting sugar as a food, and he was a pimp for the sugar industry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Goes on to say, this article goes on to say, the sugar industry has been playing the same games as big tobacco to protect their financial interests.
Yep.
It goes on to say, the more we look, the more we see that the sugar industry had a sophisticated understanding of the science for decades, sophisticated enough to manipulate it.
I often say the entire food industry is as evil as the tobacco industry and the pharmaco mafia combined.
How about the dental? The ADA.
American Dental Association is equally culpable in pushing fluoride, especially, but also mercury fillings. Mm-hmm. So-called silver, but they're 50% or more mercury.
I was talking with a dentist and recently. And this particular dentist was explaining the concern of high levels of mercury in the dentist's body because of the drilling of previously filled fillings that were amalgam mercury silver composition. And we were talking about this, and evidently it's very difficult to avoid exposure for a dentist of mercury when it becomes airborne while they're drilling. And even though they have suction and all that kind of stuff, it still becomes airborne, and it gets inhaled, and it gets on their skin and face and hands and arms and so forth, all around the dental office there where they're drilling and filling. It's a big problem. So dentists are being poisoned by their patients who have been poisoned by previous dental practices, which have included mercury silver fillings. Wow, it's a big problem. So now the question, Dr. Shealy, is, all right, let's say a person is a dentist, or let's say a person has had mercury amalgam fillings. How does one detoxify? How do you get it out?
Well, there are two ways. The easiest is Chelex, Chelex. It is an oral EDTA chelating agent. And according to Gary Gordon, a physician friend of mine for many, many years, the oral chelation is just as effective as the IV.
Okay, so when someone takes this oral substance, Chelex, what happens? They consume it, and do they urinate?
Yes. Then they excrete the mercury and other toxic minerals through the urine.
Okay. Well, Dr. Shealy, is this something that we should all consider doing, regardless of whether we are a dentist or not?
Well, the average person, even those who don't have silver mercury poison fillings, has been exposed to lead and barium. Yes. Did you know that diesel fuel contains barium of all things?
That's new to me. It's
a toxic mineral, and for some reason diesel fuel puts it out. So we're all exposed to it in the atmosphere. It may not be as bad as Roundup, but it's still poison.
So, all right. So based on that, Dr. Shealy, who hasn't been in contact with mercury? Who hasn't been in contact with being on the highway or the byway with a diesel truck in front of us, whether it be a cement mixer or a garbage truck or a municipal bus or whatever it is, or just some guy with a diesel car like me or a diesel pickup truck? We've all been behind them. They've all been in front of us at some point in our travels. Should we consider detoxifying with Chelex?
I think 100% of adults over the age of 40 ought to have a urine test for heavy metals. Okay. And if they're, have levels that are considered high, then they should consider Chelex.
Okay. Are there any risks associated with this oral chelation or
properly done? I'm told none. They're none reported, according to Gary Gordon.
Okay. And is this an over-the-counter thing, or is this something that you need?
No, it does require a prescription.
Okay. And does it require supervision while this is being done, or you just get the prescription and do it yourself and everything's good?
Well, my recommendation is you first get the test to show that you are toxic with heavy metals, and then you get the prescription, and maybe 6 months later you test again.
Okay. When we come back, Dr. Shealy, would you tell us about conversations with G? You are right all the time. All the time. You talk about, you can take poison, you can kill yourself quickly, you can take poison and slowly and kill yourself slowly. You've been talking about the fast food enterprise, criminal enterprise, poisoning us. You've been right so often, all the time. And you've been talking about sugar being toxic. And very quickly, this one professor on the internet, in the article that I was reading on Daily Mail, the quote is, "Professor says food industry slowly poisoning us with sugar." That's what you've been saying, Dr. Shealy. But now it's coming out in the mainstream news. At
last, justice ultimately comes.
Yeah. So, class, when you hear Dr. Shealy talk about things, when you hear us say things on this broadcast, and you think, no, can't be. Well, just wait a few years, and you'll find out that the mainstream has caught up with us.
Let me give you two other fascinating things, Vince. Coffee consumption, up to 3 cups minimum a day, is associated with longer telomeres. In other words, the single measurement that tells you how long you're going to live and how healthy you're going to be while getting there is improved by drinking coffee.
Okay.
Now, the other one, guess what other food that is often disparaged, especially by our vegan people, guess what food is associated with longer telomeres?
Would that be meat?
Meat.
Mm-hmm.
Red meat. Not just turkey or chicken, but good old beef.
Which if you go to our front yard, you'll see hundreds of animals that fit that description.
And this is compared with cereal, fruits, vegetables, and dairy. Red meat is the outstanding one.
There you go. Dr. Shealy?
A significant, statistically significant, 0.02. Remember, statistically significant is 0.05, but this is above just significant. It's significantly significant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love that one.
That's great. Thank you for sharing with us. Speaking of sharing, I've been looking all over for conversations with G. Mrs. Finelli has absconded with it. I put the book on the kitchen table and is gone. She's taken it. She's reading it. Dr. Shealy, can you share with us your latest book?
Yes, this is the first time I've really published this publicly. For over 33 years, I have had actual audible conversations with an angelic guide. And, in fact, I have 5 patents that were given to me by my guide. But many, many discoveries, including my rings, the rings of fire, air, water, earth, and crystal. That was all given to me by the guide that I call G for Guide. And it sort of explores my relationship in general with what I consider the divine.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you say guide, others might use the word God. Is that right?
Well, I call it guide because that's how the teacher guide identified himself as a male angel.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so, I've had these experiences where I've been guided to do things and guided not to do things. And I got to tell you, they're right. They are right. And I've had these experiences, and someday I guess we can talk about them on the air, but this is fascinating. So that's Dr. Shealy's latest book. Class, if you're interested, you can go to his website, normshealy.com, Conversations with G. That's a capital G. Dr. Shealy, thank you so much for being with us today. I look forward to seeing you very soon in person. And it'll be a lot of fun.
Blessings and happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yes, class. And above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.